This is Derek from ClassicGameRoom.com, and if you've ever wondered what your favorite Super Mario Bros. Levels would look like from Mario's perspective, this is your answer. This is Super Paper Mario for the awesome plastic Nintendo Wii. What deceptively looks like a standard 2D Mario platformer is actually something much deeper, and although it starts from that familiar foundation, it builds a veritable skyscraper of gaming creativity by adding well-implemented RPG elements, clever puzzles, great writing, and of course that little matter of switching between dimensions. Given all the changes it makes to the Paper Mario formula, I suppose one could call this a reboot of the franchise too. Super Paper Mario feels very different than its Nintendo 64 and GameCube predecessors, most notably in terms of what style the game emphasizes. While the original Paper Mario and the GameCube sequel were very much RPG games at heart, Super Paper Mario has undergone a heart transplant. Without question, this game is a platformer, first and foremost, and all the other cool elements and additions feel like icing on the cake rather than the cake batter itself. And not only do its fire flowers work like fire flowers and its schnozberries work like schnozberries, but all the game's diverse elements come together seamlessly and they just work like they should. And that all starts with the platforming. Run from left to right, jump on ledges, stomp on turtles, find the end of the level. Now, from that blueprint, Nintendo has added several RPG elements. For example, there's a wealth of collectible items with a wide array of both restorative and offensive uses. Mario's health is represented by hit points, and you can increase that health by gaining XP and leveling up. These are sort of classic RPG cliches, but they feel really natural in Super Paper Mario, and to the game's credit, it's actually better because of the RPG elements. Aside from the RPG stuff, much of Super Paper Mario's depth comes from its perspective shifting. A simple button press moves the camera from a traditional side-scrolling perspective directly behind Mario. This allows for something really cool. As enemies approach Mario from the right, he can simply flip into 3 dimensions and sidestep them. Seriously, how awesome is that? It totally shifts your thinking about classic horizontal plane Mario mechanics when Mario can simply step to the side of an oncoming enemy. More importantly, the 2D to 3D switch allows for some really clever gameplay. You can actually walk through doors you may see on the 2D background, or find ways to reach ledges that seem completely out of reach by looking at the level in 3 dimensions. You might find a hidden opening between a few trees, or see a secret staircase. I mean, the list goes on, and it's filled with really interesting concepts and mechanics that make Super Paper Mario a very clever game. Now, keep in mind, Mario is the only playable character who can switch the perspective, and although that sort of sounds like a bummer at first, it's actually to the game's benefit. There are a few other characters joining Mario, and to add even more depth, each of them has a special power or ability you'll need to complete certain tasks or progress through levels. And surprise, surprise, Bowser breathes fire.
Flamethrowers. Dope.
You can also find these little fairies which tag along with you and can perform a slew of unique actions themselves. Some of them turn into bombs you can throw, some morph into hovering platforms which protect you from spikes. There's one that even allows Mario to swing a hammer, like he did back in '81. So let's recap for a moment. We're talking unique characters, perspective shifting, ability-altering fairies, power-up items, RPG elements. I mean, one of the most impressive things about Super Paper Mario is how deep the experience is. Nothing is ever as simple as it seems. It's like every aspect of the game has been the subject of an improvement or refinement. For example, Mario has always been able to string multiple enemy stomps together, right? But in Super Paper Mario, that encouraged mechanic becomes much cooler, and it's actually incentivized. By shaking the Wii Remote after stomping an enemy, you can perform a fancy little flip in midair, which earns you more points. Now, if you string a bunch of those together, you'll earn even more points and level up much faster. Of course, as we all learned at an early age, paper always loses to rock and scissors. and as deep and clever as Super Paper Mario can be, there are few moments in which the paper tears a bit. For starters, the game is fueled by a ridiculously wordy narrative, and as funny and sharp as the writing is, there's just too much of it. There are more pop-up text bubbles in Super Paper Mario than a PC infected with viruses, so if you don't like to read, this might not be the game for you. Seriously, if you think I'm wordy, wait until you meet Count Bleck. Another issue for me is some of the character design. Now, the classic Mario characters look fantastic in the game's paper cutout style, but the characters specific to Super Paper Mario look pretty generic in comparison. They're really simple, linear designs like walking parallelograms and evil rhombuses. And standing beside the Goombas and Koopa Troopas of old, their distinct design styles just don't mesh. Speaking of design, I also have a minor gripe with the game's visuals. The levels have a fantastic look in 2D, but as soon as you switch to a 3D view, they lose a lot of their luster. They sort of look empty and barren. And it's ironic, but sometimes they look flatter in 3D than they do in 2D. Still though, it's like, who cares? I mean, how cool is this? I am sidestepping enemies! And that's the bottom line with this game. Even with its flaws, Super Paper Mario is just super paper cool.